I told my best friend everything for 15 years. She wrote it all down and sold it. Now strangers know my secrets better than my boyfriend. Posted in r/true off my chest. I'm a 33-year-old social worker. I've spent my career helping people navigate trauma, teaching them about boundaries, about trust, about healing. The irony of what I'm about to share isn't lost on me. 3 weeks ago, I walked into my local bookstore on a Saturday morning. It was supposed to be a simple errand, pick up a birthday gift for my niece, maybe browse the new releases. I had a coffee in one hand, my phone in the other. I was answering texts from my boyfriend about dinner plans. Normal. Completely normal. Then I saw it. There, on the staff picks table, positioned right at the front of the store, was my best friend's debut novel. The one she'd been working on for years. The one she'd finally sold to a major publisher 8 months ago. The one I'd celebrated with her over champagne, crying happy tears because she'd finally made it. I picked it up, smiling. I hadn't had a chance to read it yet. She'd been so secretive about the final version, saying she wanted me to experience it, fresh, like any reader would. I remember thinking that was a little strange, but I understood artistic pride. I opened to the first chapter, and my world collapsed. The opening scene was a hospital room. A woman, mid-30s, curled in a bed with her husband beside her. The doctor entering with that particular expression, the one that tells you everything before any words are spoken. The woman knowing, somehow, that the heartbeat they'd heard at the last appointment would never be heard again. The husband's hand going limp in hers. The fluorescent lights buzzing. The way the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than any clock should ever tick. It was my miscarriage. Word for word. Detail for detail. I described that moment to her sitting on her couch 3 years ago, wrapped in a blanket she'd given me, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I told her about the fluorescent lights. I told her about the clock. I told her how my ex-husband's hand went limp, how that was the moment I knew our marriage was already over, even though it would take another 18 months to end officially. I told her in confidence. I told her in the sacred space of our 15-year friendship. And she wrote it down. Changed my name to Charlotte. Changed the hospital from Seattle to Boston. Changed the husband from an IT consultant to an architect. But it was me. Every word was me. I stood in that bookstore for 45 minutes, flipping through pages, watching my entire life unfold as a novel. My abusive ex-husband was there, barely disguised. She kept his habit of cracking his knuckles before he yelled, the way he'd smile at waiters while treating me like garbage at home, the specific insult he'd use when he wanted to hurt me, calling me exhaustingly needy. My dead mother was there. The cancer diagnosis. The way I'd held her hand at the end. The last words she said to me, which I've never spoken to anyone except my therapist and my best friend. My therapist was there. Our sessions. The things I'd said in confidence about my childhood, about my father's emotional absence, about the shame I carried for years over my eating disorder in college. All of it. Fictionalized just enough to be legally protected, raw enough to be instantly recognizable. She sat across from me while I cried about my miscarriage. She held my hand. She said, "I'm so sorry." And she was taking notes. She was always taking notes. I bought the book. I went to my car. I sat there for 2 hours, reading every single page while tears streamed down my face. The dedication page read, "To my best friend, who taught me that truth is the best fiction." I threw up in the parking lot. Update 1. 3 days later. I need to give you context about this friendship so you understand why this has broken me. We met in college, freshman year, randomly assigned as roommates. She was the struggling writer from a small town, working 2 jobs to afford tuition. I was the scholarship kid from the other side of the country, terrified and alone. We bonded over late-night study sessions and cheap wine and dreams about the lives we wanted. For 15 years, she was my person. My emergency contact. The first one I called when things fell apart and the first one I called when things were good. When my marriage started crumbling, she drove 6 hours to stay with me for a weekend because she heard something in my voice. When my mother was dying, she took 2 weeks off work to help me care for her. When I finally left my husband, she helped me pack boxes at 2 a.m. while he was out. I trusted her with everything. Everything. She struggled for years as a writer. Rejection after rejection. Day jobs that crushed her spirit. She'd talk about how hard it was to find authentic material, how all her stories felt hollow, how she couldn't seem to capture real human emotion on the page. Looking back, I understand now. Every conversation was research. Every confession was material. Every tear I cried was a scene she was filing away for later. The night my mother died, I called her at 3 a.m. I told her things I've never told anyone, about the guilt I felt for being relieved that the suffering was over, about the last lucid moment my mother had when she looked at me and said my name like I was still a child, about finding her jewelry box later and the letter she'd written me but never sent. That letter is in the novel, practically verbatim. The friend character gives it to the protagonist at her mother's funeral. There was no funeral scene in my real life. My mother wanted cremation, no service. But she wrote one anyway. She gave my mother a funeral she never had, complete with dialogue she invented for relatives to say. She put words in my dead mother's husband's mouth. My stepfather, who is still alive and has now read this book. He called me last week, confused and hurt. "Is this how you saw things?" he asked. "Is this how you felt about your mother's death?" I couldn't answer him. Because it was and it wasn't. It was my truth, filtered through her imagination, distorted into something that looked like me but wasn't quite me. Something I now have to explain and contextualize for everyone who reads it. Update 2. 1 week after discovery. I confronted her. Of course I confronted her. We met at a coffee shop, public, because I didn't trust myself to do this privately. I brought the book. I'd marked passages with sticky notes. 47 of them, to be exact. 47 moments from my life presented as fiction. Her face when she saw me wasn't guilt. It was something else. Eagerness, almost. Anticipation. "You read it," she said, smiling. "What did you think?" I stared at her. "Is this a joke?" "What do you mean?" "The miscarriage scene. The divorce. My mother. My therapy sessions. All of it. It's all me." She nodded, still smiling. "I know. That's what makes it so real. Everyone says Charlotte is the most authentic character they've ever read. It's because she is real. She's based on a real woman going through real things. She's based on me. These are my private experiences. You didn't ask permission. You didn't tell me. Here's where it gets worse." She looked genuinely confused. Like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. "Permission," she repeated. "Writers don't ask permission to be inspired by life. All great fiction comes from real experiences. I was honoring our friendship. I was honoring your story. Don't you see how beautiful Charlotte is? How sympathetic? Readers love her. They cry for her. I gave your pain meaning." "You gave my pain a price tag," I said. "You sold it. You're making money off my trauma." She reached across the table, tried to take my hand. "I knew you might feel weird at first, but I honestly thought you'd be flattered. Your story resonated with readers because it was true. That's a gift. Your life experiences helped create something meaningful." I pulled my hand back. "Did you ask yourself, even once, whether I wanted my coworkers to know about my miscarriage? Whether I wanted my family to read about my divorce? Whether I wanted strangers on the internet discussing my abusive marriage like it's entertainment?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's fiction. It's clearly fiction. I changed all the names, all the places. Nobody could possibly. Everyone already has. My sister called me yesterday because she recognized our mother's death scene. My ex-husband's new wife reached out to ask if the abuse described in the book was real. My therapist, knows that our confidential sessions are now published for public consumption. I never used your therapist's name or practice or. You described her office. You described her techniques. You used specific phrases from our sessions. She recognized herself. She was so disturbed she couldn't finish the session last week. She just stared at me, still not getting it. Art requires sacrifice. Real emotional truth requires drawing from real life. I thought you understood that about my work. You always said you wanted to support my writing. I wanted to support your writing, not be your writing." We talked for another hour. It went nowhere. She kept insisting that I was overreacting, that I should be proud my experiences translated into such powerful prose, that someday I'd look back and be grateful she'd turned my pain into something beautiful. I gave her my trauma because I trusted her. She sold it because she needed a career. When I left that coffee shop, I knew the friendship was over. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I finally understood something fundamental about who she was. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't deliberately cruel. She simply didn't have the capacity to understand why what she'd done was wrong. To her, I wasn't a person with boundaries and privacy. I was material. I had always been material. Update 3, 2 weeks after discovery. I consulted 3 lawyers. The news was devastating but not surprising. You cannot copyright life experiences. You cannot sue someone for being inspired by your story. If she'd stolen my diary and published it verbatim, I'd have a case. But she was careful. She changed enough, names, locations, specific details, to make it legally protected fiction. It's a gray area, the first lawyer told me, but she stayed on the legal side of that gray. What she did was ethically reprehensible, the second lawyer said, but not actionable. I'm sorry. The third lawyer asked if there were any untrue, defamatory statements I could point to. I couldn't. Everything in that book was true, or close enough to true that I couldn't claim defamation. She hadn't lied about me. She'd just exposed me. Everyone says I should be flattered that my pain made such beautiful art. But it's not art. It's theft. She stole my worst moments and made them entertainment. The reviews started pouring in. Literary journals called it raw and unflinching. Book clubs discussed Charlotte's journey like she was a real person. Podcasts dissected the themes of female trauma, generational grief, the aftermath of domestic abuse. My life, my trauma, turned into content for strangers. The social media response was the worst part. People posted crying selfies about how deeply the miscarriage scene affected them. They shared their own stories of loss, saying Charlotte's experience made them feel seen. They praised my friend for her brave, authentic voice. She was booked for interviews. She was nominated for a debut fiction award. She was described as a literary voice of her generation, someone who captured modern female experience with unprecedented honesty. And I was erased. My role in that book was invisible. I was just the raw material she'd mined and refined and sold. Update 4, 3 weeks after discovery. The exposure. The fallout in my personal life has been catastrophic. My co-workers, I'm a social worker at a community mental health center, have been awkward around me since the book came out. My supervisor pulled me aside and asked, gently, whether the domestic abuse described in the novel was accurate, because there are mandatory reporting considerations if there are ongoing safety concerns. I had to explain that it was years ago, that my ex-husband and I have no contact, that the marriage has been over for 4 years. But I also had to explain that yes, the book was about me. Yes, those were my real experiences. Yes, everyone in my professional life has now read my deepest vulnerabilities published without my consent. Some colleagues have been kind. Others have been curious in a way that feels invasive, asking questions about the miscarriage, the divorce, the therapy, like my life is now public property open for discussion. One coworker, meaning well, said, I always knew there was something in your past. You have that look. Now it all makes sense. I didn't know what to say to that. My family has fractured. My sister believes I should be flattered by the representation. She made Mom's death beautiful, she said. She honored Mom. We haven't spoken in 2 weeks because I can't make her understand that it wasn't her story to tell. It was mine. And I wasn't asked. My stepfather can't look me in the eye anymore. He's convinced the novel represents how I truly see him, as a peripheral character in my mother's death, barely present, emotionally unavailable. That characterization came from a single conversation I had with my friend years ago, during a particularly dark period. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was grieving. I was angry at everyone. But now that anger is immortalized in print, and my stepfather will carry it forever. My new boyfriend has been complicated. We'd been dating for 8 months before the book came out. He knew about my divorce in general terms, about my mother's death, about my history. He didn't know the details. He didn't know about the miscarriage at all. I wasn't ready to share that yet. He read the book before I could explain. He read about the miscarriage, the abuse, the eating disorder, the therapy. He read all of it, and then he came to me with this strange expression, like he was looking at someone he didn't quite recognize. Were you ever going to tell me? He asked. I was going to tell you everything, I said. When I was ready. When it was my choice. He understood, intellectually. He said all the right things. But something shifted between us after that. He looks at me differently now, with pity, with caution, like I'm more fragile than he thought. The intimacy we'd built, the gradual disclosure of vulnerability that's supposed to happen naturally in a relationship, was stolen from us. She stole that too. My therapist is in that book. Our conversations. The things I said in confidence. She fictionalized my healing and sold it for $24.99. The irony that hurts most, in my professional life, I teach people about boundaries. I help abuse survivors recognize violations. I counsel clients on rebuilding trust after betrayal. And here I am, betrayed in a way I never saw coming, by the last person I ever suspected. Update 5. The essay and the aftermath. 2 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I'd been awake for hours, running through every legal option, every avenue of recourse, every possibility for making this right. There was nothing. The law protected her. The industry celebrated her. The narrative, struggling writer finally succeeds with deeply personal debut, was already written. I couldn't win legally, so I decided to win publicly. I wrote an essay. A simple, direct, unadorned essay about what happened. No embellishment, no dramatic language, just facts. The timeline of our friendship. The specific passages that matched my life. The conversations she'd quoted almost verbatim. The dedication that now felt like a confession. The aftermath I was living through. I titled it, "I'm Charlotte, When Your Best Friend Sells Your Trauma." I posted it on Medium at 2 a.m. I shared it once on my personal social media. Then I put my phone down and went to sleep. By morning, it had over 200,000 views. By afternoon, it was trending. Media outlets were picking it up. Literary Twitter was exploding. People were going back to the book, rereading scenes with new context, recognizing the ethical violations that had been hiding in plain sight. Her publisher released a statement calling the allegations unsubstantiated claims. She posted a long response claiming I was a close friend who's having difficulty separating art from life, and that all fiction draws from reality. She said I was jealous of her success. She said I'd never understood the creative process. She said she was sorry if I felt hurt, but that she stood by her work as fiction. It didn't matter. People had already connected the dots. They'd found old social media photos of us together, matched timelines and locations from my essay to passages in her book, identified the nearly word-for-word transcription of conversations I'd had in her presence. Some readers found my mother's obituary online and compared it to the novel's death scene. The consensus shifted overnight. She went from brave literary voice to predatory opportunist. Former friends came forward with their own stories, smaller violations, things they'd told her in confidence that appeared in her earlier, unpublished work. A pattern emerged. I wasn't the first person she'd used. I was just the first one she'd successfully profited from. Book sales spiked temporarily, controversy drives curiosity, but reviews took a dark turn. People started one-starring it on Goodreads, calling it exploitative, unethical, morally bankrupt. Her award nomination was quietly withdrawn. Interview invitations dried up. Her agent stopped returning calls. She texted me yesterday. A long, rambling message about how I'd destroyed her career and ruined everything she worked for. She said I was being vindictive. She said I'd always been jealous of her talent. She said that if I really understood friendship, I'd see that she was honoring me, not exploiting me. I didn't respond. Final update. 1 month later. Here's what I need people to understand about how this story ends. She lost. In the court of public opinion, she lost completely. Her reputation is destroyed. Her career is effectively over before it really began. Other writers publicly distanced themselves from her. She had to delete her social media accounts because of the backlash. But I didn't win. Not really. The book is still out there. It's still a bestseller, more so now, because of the controversy. Every copy sold is my life, packaged for consumption by strangers who will never know me but now know everything about my darkest moments. My miscarriage is public. My divorce is public. My therapy sessions, my dead mother, my eating disorder, my abuse, all of it, permanently accessible to anyone with $25 and curiosity about the scandal. I cannot undo that. No viral essay, no ruined career, no amount of public vindication can put my secrets back inside me. They belong to everyone now. My boyfriend and I are trying. We're in couples therapy, working through the violation of disclosure that neither of us chose. Some days are better than others. He's trying to unsee what he read, to let me tell my own story in my own time. But there are moments when I catch him looking at me with that expression, the one that says he knows too much, that the mystery of who I am has been solved by someone else before I could reveal myself on my own terms. My sister and I still aren't speaking. She maintains that the book was a beautiful tribute to our mother. I maintain that tribute requires consent. We may never resolve this. My professional reputation has recovered, mostly. My colleagues have moved on to other gossip. But sometimes I catch new clients hesitating when they meet me, and I wonder if they've read it, if they're comparing me to Charlotte, if they're thinking about all my vulnerabilities while I'm trying to help them with theirs. The book dedication says, "To my best friend, who taught me that truth is the best fiction." I used to believe that friendship taught me about trust. Now I know it taught her about craft. Here's what I keep thinking about, late at night when I can't sleep. She wasn't evil. She wasn't malicious. In her own twisted way, she genuinely believed she was doing something good. She genuinely couldn't understand why I was hurt. She genuinely thought my pain was a gift she was giving to the world. And that's somehow worse than if she'd done it deliberately. Malice, I could understand. Deliberate betrayal, I could make sense of. But this complete inability to see me as a person with boundaries, this fundamental blindness to the violation she was committing, there's no closure in that. There's no satisfying confrontation where the villain acknowledges they're wrong. She still thinks she was right. She probably always will. I'm in therapy twice a week now, working through what she'd call the sequel to my trauma. My therapist, a new one obviously, says that processing betrayal is harder than processing abuse, in some ways. Abuse is clear. It's violent. It has obvious villains and obvious victims. But betrayal looks like love, right up until the moment it doesn't. I trusted someone for 15 years. I gave her everything. I let her see me at my worst. I thought that was what friendship meant. She sat across from me while I cried about my miscarriage. She held my hand. She said, "I'm so sorry." And she was taking notes. She was always taking notes. Someone asked me in the comments of my original essay what I would say to her if I could say anything. I've thought about it a lot. I think I would say this. You took the most vulnerable moments of my life and turned them into entertainment. You took my trust and converted it into profit. You took my friendship and mined it for material. And the worst part is, you don't even know what you did wrong. You never will. I'm not Charlotte. Charlotte is a fiction, a carefully crafted protagonist designed to make readers cry. I'm the real woman behind her. Messy, complicated, angry, hurt, trying to rebuild myself around the hole you left in my life. You got your bestseller. You got your moment in the spotlight. You got to be the brave voice of your generation, for a little while at least. But you'll never have another friend like me. No one will ever trust you like I did. And someday, when the scandal has died down and you're trying to write your next book, you'll realize that you've used up all your material. You'll have nothing left but yourself, and we both know that was never enough. That's not revenge. That's just consequence. Edit. Responses to comments. A lot of people have asked why I'm sharing this publicly, whether I'm just doing what she did, turning private pain into public content. The difference is consent. This is MY story. These are MY experiences. I am choosing to share them, on my own terms, in my own words. She didn't give me that choice. She made that decision for me. I'm sharing because I hope it helps someone. If you're a writer who's tempted to use a friend's trauma without asking, maybe think twice. If you're a reader who loved that novel, maybe consider the real person whose life you consumed as fiction. If you're someone whose trust has been violated in ways that don't fit neat legal categories, maybe know that you're not alone, and your anger is valid, and healing is possible even when justice isn't. To my former best friend, if you're reading this, I don't forgive you. I probably never will. But I'm not going to let you be the narrator of my life anymore. That job belongs to me. This is where my story ends, not with victory, not with defeat, just with the quiet, bitter aftermath of learning that some people see you as a resource to be extracted rather than a person to be cherished. I'm still standing. I'm still healing. I'm still here. That has to be enough. TLDR, my best friend of 15 years wrote a best-selling novel using all my deepest secrets. My miscarriage, my abusive marriage, my mother's death, my therapy sessions, without my permission. I couldn't sue because it was legally fiction. I wrote a public essay exposing what happened. Her career is ruined, but my private life is still public property. Victory is hollow. The betrayal can't be undone. Here's what I learned from having my life turned into a bestseller. Some people see you as a resource to be extracted rather than a person to be cherished. She sat across from me while I cried about my miscarriage. She held my hand. She said, "I'm so sorry." And she was taking notes. She was always taking notes. 15 years of friendship. 15 years of secrets shared in sacred spaces. My divorce. My abusive ex-husband. My mother's death. My therapy sessions. Every tear I cried was a scene she was filing away for later. I gave her my trauma because I trusted her. She sold it because she needed a career. The book dedication says, "To my best friend, who taught me that truth is the best fiction." I threw up when I read that. When I confronted her, she looked genuinely confused. "Writers don't ask permission to be inspired by life," she said. "I was honoring your story. Don't you see how beautiful Charlotte is? Readers love her. I gave your pain meaning." "You gave my pain a price tag," I said. You sold it. She wasn't evil. She wasn't malicious. She simply didn't have the capacity to understand why what she'd done was wrong. To her, I wasn't a person with boundaries and privacy. I was material. I had always been material. Everyone says I should be flattered that my pain made such beautiful art. But it's not art. It's theft. She stole my worst moments and made them entertainment. My therapist is in that book. Our conversations. The things I said in confidence. She fictionalized my healing and sold it for $24.99. I couldn't win legally. You can't copyright life experiences. So I won publicly. I wrote an essay. It went viral. Her career is destroyed. Her reputation is gone. But I didn't really win. The book is still out there. My miscarriage is public. My divorce is public. My dead mother, my abuse, my eating disorder, all of it, permanently accessible to anyone with $25 and curiosity. My boyfriend read my secrets before I could tell him myself. My stepfather thinks the novel is how I really see him. My sister believes I should be grateful for the tribute. Malice, I could understand. Deliberate betrayal, I could make sense of. But this complete inability to see me as a person with boundaries, there's no closure in that. She still thinks she was right. She probably always will. The difference between what she did and what I'm doing now is consent. This is my story. I'm choosing to share it, on my own terms, in my own words. She didn't give me that choice. You took the most vulnerable moments of my life and turned them into entertainment. You took my trust and converted it into profit. And the worst part is, you don't even know what you did wrong. You'll never have another friend like me. No one will ever trust you like I did. And someday, when you're trying to write your next book, you'll realize you've used up all your material. That's not revenge. That's just consequence.